Welcome to dkameraTV, today with a hands-on video of the FujiFilm X-T1. The FujiFilm X-T1 is Fujifilm's latest X-series interchangeable lens camera, featuring an X-mount for X-mount X-series lenses, as well as an X-trans APS-C sized CMOS sensor. It is positioned in between the X-E2 and the X Pro 1, and it is quite a bit different from its siblings. This becomes evident when we look at the body of the camera. The X-T1 is styled to look like a DSLR, whereas the X-E2 and the X Pro 1 are styled to look like a rangefinder camera. The X-T1 has a viewfinder that is in the center of the camera on one axis with the lens. Also, the X-T1 has a lot more manual options on the body as compared to the X-E2 and the X Pro 1, and also the body is weather sealed for dust and water. The technical specifications of the camera are very similar to its X-series siblings. It features the 16 megapixel X-trans CMOS sensor. Native ISO goes from 200 to 6400 when capturing RAW files. It can be extended to 100 on the lower end and 51200 on the upper end when shooting JPEG images. The display on the rear side measures 3-inch. It's got a resolution of roughly over 1 million pixels, so that's sufficient for most purposes. However, if you really need critical sharpness, for example when focusing manually, then you're better off using the viewfinder, which resolves 2.36 million pixels, and that's pretty much and is almost as good as looking through the optical viewfinder of a DSLR. The shutter goes all the way to 1/4000th of a second, which is moderately fast. It's not quite enough to shoot wide open in bright sunlight, but it's the same as we see on other camera models. Of course, the X-T1 also records Full HD video at 60 frames per second. This means that you can eventually also take slow motion footage if you downsample the video to 30 frames per second in post-production. It takes 8 pictures in series in continuous mode per second. This is pretty good. It's not an awful lot, but it's sufficient. The camera also comes with Wi-Fi. It has a dedicated smartphone app, so images can be shared online immediately after taking. The body alone weighs 440 grams. It's a bit more with the lens attached, more like 700 to 800 grams. We have the 18 to 50 millimeter kit zoom on the camera here. The price for the body alone is around €1,200 now in February 2014. So, let's take a closer look at the body of the X-T1 and at all these dials and buttons that it comes with. The body of the Fujifilm X-T1 offers a lot more manual control than its X-series siblings, and that's what we want to take a closer look at now. On the front, the X-T1 is pretty classic. It's got the lens release button, a switch for the focusing mode, a PC socket for flash synchronization, another function button on the front that you can reach with your middle finger, a settings dial, and the focus assist lamp. On this side you'll find the X-T1's SD card compartment, and on the opposite side there are a couple interfaces, USB, HDMI and a microphone plug. Now let's get to the top, where really most of the photographer's life is happening. We have the on-off switch here, the shutter button, a dedicated video button that immediately starts video recording. There's a huge exposure compensation dial that goes from +3 to -3 EV, a function button that activates the Wi-Fi function of the camera, and of course the large shutter speed dial, which is locked and needs to be unlocked in order to turn it with this button in the center, which can be a bit cumbersome at times. New on the X-T1 is another settings dial on the top, and this one is for the ISO setting. It also has an automatic position just as the shutter speed dial, and it also has this unlocking button in the center that needs to be pressed in order to switch the settings. Then there's the flash socket on top, as well as a small dial for the diopter compensation of the viewfinder. Below these dials on the top of the camera are two additional switches, and the first one is for the image recording mode, for single shot, continuous shooting, bracketing and so on, and the other one below the shutter speed dial selects the metering mode, so there's really a lot more manual control available on the X-T1 than, for example, on the X-E2 or the X Pro one. Now the back again is pretty standard, as we already know it from other Fujifilm models, but also from other cameras in general. We have the large 3-inch display that can be tilted upward and downward. There's the viewfinder with an eye sensor that doesn't work in playback mode, but as soon as we go into shooting mode, the screen goes dark when the face is near the viewfinder. There's the button to activate the playback mode, a button to delete images that were taken. This button is the exposure memory. This is the focus memory button. Another settings dial there. A button to activate the focus assist mode, which activates magnification as well as focus peaking for manual focus aid. A quick menu button so we can easily change settings such as the white balance. A display button that switches the display information or that takes us out of a menu, and of course the menu button here with a 4-way dial around it. Finally, on the bottom of the camera we have the battery compartment, the tripod mount and an interface for the battery grip. So much for the Fujifilm X-T1's body. Now that we've taken a look at the body of the X-T1, let's take a look at the menu system and how that works on this camera. The menu options of the Fujifilm X-T1 are pretty similar, if not identical, to those of the X-E1, X-E2 and X Pro 1. On the rear display there are 4 different information overlays that can be cycled through via the display button. This is the information screen, which works similar to that on a classic DSLR before DSLRs received live view. This gives you basic information about your camera settings when you're using the viewfinder only to compose your images. Alternatively, when using the rear screen for preview, you can choose the standard set of information overlays. You can choose to display no information at all, and there's a customizable screen. In this case now we added a level gauge. The camera's main menu, which we access via the menu button, looks similar to that of its X-series siblings. There's the shooting menu where all the relevant shooting information and settings can be selected, and there's the camera setup menu where such things as language and time can be set up. In image review mode there's also a dedicated menu where image review and editing settings can be chosen. Here we also find the option to activate the Wi-Fi communication, which lets us connect the camera, for example, to a smartphone or a tablet. The Fujifilm X-T1 comes with built-in Wi-Fi, and it also comes with a camera app that you can use on your smartphone. And now I want to show you a bit how this camera app works and what you can do with it. Thanks to its built-in Wi-Fi connectivity, the Fujifilm X-T1 can be connected, for example, to a smartphone or a tablet. This is done via Fujifilm's camera remote app. And in order to connect the two devices, we have to start the remote app on the camera, and we have to activate the Wi-Fi function on the camera. Now, first we have to select whether we want to remote control the camera, whether we want to import images to the phone, or whether we want to geotag images that we already have taken with the camera. Let's start with remote control. Now the smartphone wants to connect to the camera, and we have to give the OK to the camera. Yes, you may connect to the smartphone. This may take a while until phone and camera have found each other. Usually it takes a couple of seconds, and when the connection is established, we are prompted to press the OK button one more time, and then the remote control pops up on the smartphone. And what we see in the preview is what the camera sees through its lens. In this case now a preview on the monitor that we have here to keep track of what we're doing in our videos. Now there are a couple of settings that we can choose from in the remote control app. We can set the aperture value, we can set exposure compensation, ISO setting can be adjusted, as well as several other camera settings such as the white balance or the film simulation mode. When everything is set, the big red button in the middle of the screen captures an image, or alternatively a video when we're in video mode. To review the image, we simply press the playback button and we get into the playback menu, where we can easily select the images that we have taken and, if we so desire, import them into the smartphone. If we're not going to use the remote control, we can use the import function that goes directly to the playback menu, or we can choose to geotag images. Because the X-T1 doesn't have a dedicated GPS module, this is the easiest way to provide your images with geolocation information. With its specifications and its styling, the FujiFilm X-T1 is a direct competitor to the Olympus EM1. So let's take a closer look at the differences and the similarities between the two cameras. Both feature a 16 megapixel sensor. That of the Fuji is APS-C sized, that of the Olympus is Micro Four Thirds sized, and that's where the first differences are visible. The Fujifilm has much better high ISO performance. At 3200 ISO we can see hardly any noise, whereas the Olympus is already losing a lot of texture at that sensitivity. The bodies are both sealed against water and dust. Both have a pronounced grip, although that of the Olympus is slightly larger. Both cameras are able to record video, but this is where the Olympus has the edge. The Olympus has a lot of manual options to offer for video recording, whereas the FujiFilm X-T1 has hardly any manual options in its video mode. The Fuji takes 8 continuous pictures per second. The Olympus takes 10 continuous pictures per second. That's a bit more, so if that's the critical point for you, then the EM1 is the camera to get. The Fuji body weighs not as much as that of the Olympus. The Olympus is a bit heavier, although with a lens attached, both cameras weigh roughly the same. One major difference is price. Currently, in February 2014, the Olympus EM1 body alone is 1,500 euros, whereas the X-T1 is only 1,200 euros. That's a huge difference. However, as we saw, the Olympus is much better at video. Both cameras also feature a 3-inch screen with 1 million dot resolution and an integrated optical viewfinder with 2.36 million dots resolution. So they are pretty much on the same level right there. Another advantage that the Olympus has over the Fuji is its 1/8000th second shutter, which is twice as fast as that of the Fuji, which means you can take pictures with the aperture wide open even when it's bright outside, which is not possible with the Fujifilm. So we see both cameras are very similar. They have some slight differences, mainly where it concerns image quality, where the Fujifilm has the edge in the stills mode and the Olympus has the edge in the video mode. So if video is your focus, then the EM1 is the camera to get. If you're on a budget, or if you care more about still images, then the Fujifilm is the camera to get. That was the D-camera hands-on video of the FujiFilm X-T1. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can find a full review as well as image quality comparisons on dkamera.de. Thanks for watching and hope to see you next time again.